Hello there and welcome to Strength for Tomorrow Radio with me, Stuart Thompson. So glad you could join me. Last week we had Stephanie Clark, so not last week, it was 2 weeks ago, we had Stephanie Clark on from SheFit, who is operating a boot camp and outdoor women's fitness program in the parks in Warrenpoint and Restrever. It's great to have Stephanie on. We had a great chat, some really good topics, interesting topics, things that people don't often talk about. We talked about all of it, and do go and listen to that if you haven't already, and do check out Stephanie's stuff on Facebook and Instagram. So today we're going to think about fitness tests, and specifically fitness tests for the police service, the fire service and the armed forces. And my question is, are they getting too easy? Now, we have this idea in our head that the people in the police and the fire service and the armed forces are the fittest of the fit. They are at the pinnacle of human fitness, like Olympians. Now, with all the improvements in the last 100 years in our knowledge around nutrition, anatomy, physiology, you would expect all athletes to kind of keep improving. You expect the average level to keep improving and going up. So if there's a fitness test required, you'd expect them to keep lifting that higher and higher, so they're getting the cream off the crop. But if that's the case, why has the average gotten lower, is my question. Why have the physical standards that are required to join the police, the fire service, the armed forces, why have they been reduced in recent years? Have they been reduced? Maybe I'm talking out of my hat. They've changed. They've certainly changed. Are they easier? That's what we're going to look at. Hopefully it's interesting for you, because it's interesting for me, because I think there's just public perception that if you're in the fire service, oh, they're really fit, really strong. If you're in the police, really fit, really strong. If you're in the armed forces, oh, there's just an unattainable level of fitness you have to get into them. Is that the case though? We're going to look at that and hopefully have some fun with it as well. And if you are in any of those areas and I've gotten anything wrong, I'd love to hear from you. I will correct it in the following episodes. In case you think I'm disrespecting any of these services, I'm really not. That's not the case. It's to just throw it out there and to make people aware of what the standards are, and maybe even make you think I could join them because I am as fit, maybe even fitter than the current standard. So stick around. We're also going to have news of the week and joke of the week later on. So first of all, the question is, what should the tests consist of? So testing, I would say it should require some level of preparation. So you shouldn't just be able to have a sedentary lifestyle and all of a sudden say, I'm going to join the police, or I'm going to join the fire service, I'm going to join any area or department that requires some sort of physical fitness. There's a physical fitness element. Now, if you're applying for a desk job, it's probably not as important, right? But if you're applying to be a cop, you're applying to be a fireman or woman, you're applying to be in the special forces, then what sort of level of fitness should you be at? What should the tests consist of? Now, I can come up with ideas, you can come up with ideas, and we've got to get one thing clear. There's no perfect test. There's no test that's going to be absolutely perfect and that's going to be foolproof. If I come up with an idea, I'm sure you could pick holes in it, and I could pick holes in it, and same thing if you come up with an idea of what the test should be. But can we get better tests? How do we establish a good standard? So you need to have tests. I think that you need to have tests that are relative to the environment that they're going to be working in. You need to be able to perform duties and operations that are going to be similar to what you're going to encounter on a day-to-day basis. Physical preparedness, basically. Being ready for anything, being strong enough for anything, being fit enough for anything, having enough endurance, enough stamina, enough explosiveness, enough power, all those things, as well as obviously the mental capability. So being able to follow orders, which is why I'm not in any of them. Probably other reasons as well, but being able to follow orders, being able to have some sort of aptitude, a level of aptitude that you can perform tasks mentally pretty well. You can do things like winding up hoses and stuff. I applied for the fire service a couple of times, got through the physical side of it, like the aptitude tests. They were great fun. I really enjoyed them, but I couldn't help but think they were very easy. They were, there was more technical things like winding up a hose properly and climbing up a ladder, doing a leg lock, blah blah blah, shouting out instructions. So all these sort of things, they're all good fun though. There was a one you had to do like a follow a line when you were blindfolded, through a pod, and you were going up down things, climbing over things, going underneath things, and you had to do it in a certain amount of time. And yeah, it was good fun. I really enjoyed preparing for those. But speaking of what should the test be, I could see the relevance of those, but I could see that they were maybe easier than what I imagined. I thought maybe you had to pick up like a heavy sandbag and carry it out, and do so many of them and so often, or put on a load and walk up a ladder, do kind of heavy farmer carries, things that are going to actually physically test you. They weren't as rigorous as I thought. In fact, I came away from them feeling less safe in my house. If I had a house fire, I feel less safe now knowing the standard is required physically of the fire service in Northern Ireland right now. Like, if you're listening to this and that offends you, I'm sorry, but the standard is not as high. And even chatting to fire officers who've been there a while, they'll tell you the same thing. The standard has come down. So I think the standard needs to be the test. Sorry, the test should consist of something that is relative to what you're going to be doing. Now, not being a fire in the fire service, not being in the police service, I probably don't have as good an idea. Maybe it's what's required day to day, but I can tell you that the current standard is not what's required. It's a lot less than what should be required. The other question is, how much work should someone have to put in to reach the standard? Should you have to do a couple of months' work? Should you have to get stronger? Should you have to get fitter? How should it take you weeks? Like, I personally, I don't think you should be able to just rock up and be able to do it. I think the test as well, they shouldn't consist of anything too technical. If they do, I think you need to be able to get a couple of tries at it, or have some way of practicing it. So, for example, if you're going to be testing strength, is it appropriate to ask people to be able to squat perfectly, to be able to deadlift? I think so, but other people might not think so. I think you should be able to do those sort of things. I think those are skills, are transferable skills, or transferable strengths. How much work should someone have to put in to reach the standard? I think weeks and months. I think it shouldn't just be an overnight thing. I don't think you should just be able to rock up, unless you do keep yourself in pretty good nick. But that's just my 2 cents. I could think of all sorts of physical tests, and they would look slightly different for whether it's the police service, the fire service, or the armed forces. I could think of lots of different tests that would be, in my perspective, would be appropriate. But again, I don't live in that world, so maybe I'm not best placed. But living outside that world and looking at the current standards and the current tests, I definitely don't think they're appropriate. So, crack on. Let's look at the police first of all and what the standard is there. We're going to look at the UK police, specifically the PSNI. I think there's some sort of a crossover with the likes of the Metropolitan Police and the Greater Manchester Police, blah blah blah, mainland UK. But it's quite hard to get a hold of the specifics sometimes of all the details. One, because they change so often. Number two, because they're kind of top secret or something. I don't think they want the bad guys knowing how fit or unfit the police are. It's kind of concerning. But when I was looking for the test, there was a Belfast Telegraph article from 2015 that came up, and the title of it is PSNI U-Turn and Fitness Test. Police change policy on physical checks for female candidates. This is in April 2015, so like 7 years ago. And it says the PSNI has been forcing the U-turn over the fitness testing of female recruits just weeks after a senior officer claimed that women in Northern Ireland were not fit enough to pass the physical for potential recruits. The organisation has radically changed its one strike policy. That's nuts. I can't believe someone said that. That was 2015. Have times really changed so much? I can guarantee you that I have several females in the gym here who train with me, and they would be more than capable of passing these fitness tests with flying colours. I have absolutely no doubt about that. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. But yeah, this is in 2015, and it says here candidates, both male and female, who failed the grueling test will now be given a second chance. So there's a push-pull test, and it requires you, I believe, to be able to push 34 kilos of weight and pull 35 kilos of weight for males and females. So in one sense, I like the consistency of the standard, that it's the same for both men and women. I don't see why it should be less for women. I don't see why it should be more for men. The bad guys don't care. I don't agree with lowering standards just to get more people over the line, to get more people recruited. It's like me turning up for a job interview and not having a notion about software. This may or may not be a true story, and trying to blag my way through it. And then, like, is it fair that they then say, well, you're from Warren Point, you don't know much about software down there, you were born there, you can't help it. We'll let you buy. Just tell us tell us. If you can say the name of the software out loud, we'll let you have the job. Okay. No, it's a really bad example, but to get the point, why should the standard be reduced just to get me in the door because I'm from Warren Point? Now, people from Warren Point know loads about software, I'm pretty sure. It's just a terrible example, okay? But do you get the point? Same with the fire service. Why should the standard be dropped? The physical standard be dropped, whether it's male or female. Let the men and the women work to get to that standard rather than dropping the standard. It's just insanity. Fires don't care. Physics doesn't care. An unconscious body doesn't care whether it's a male or a female dragging her out of the burning building. It only cares about its life being saved, right? And if a man or a woman cannot lift that object, they can't lift it. It's as simple as that. Should they be given a bye because they are of a certain gender, certain sex? Nope, not in my opinion. Argue with me if you want about that, but I'm not going to change my mind about that. So it says here, a shift in policy comes amid concern over the low success rate for female applicants to the PSNI. A recruitment campaign launched in 2013 saw just 67 women securing one of the 353 posts. Over 60% of women in the 2013 recruitment process failed the fitness test. Belfast Telegraph last month challenged the Chief Constable to take the fitness test after Mr Finley's comments about female fitness levels. He has not responded to your invitation to take the test. Funny that, isn't it? It's very funny that. The physical competency assessment comprises of an obstacle course based on physical activities that officers are likely to come across on the job, which must be complete 3 times within 3 minutes 54 seconds. Once the course is completed, candidates have to display their strength and resistance for 20 seconds in an isokinetic machine, which simulates pushing and pulling in a struggle with someone. Cool. So that's fun. So just going back to the numbers for that machine, I found numbers online. It was 34 kilos of pushing power and 35 kilos of pulling power. Now that's not a really very high number, especially for men. That's like a really, really, really basic bench press, like a warm-up bench press. It's a pretty standard overhead press as well. For women, for a lot of women, that could be done within a couple of months. They could get up to that sort of strength. Some women will have it much, much quicker and be fine with doing that. 20 seconds is how many reps? 3-4 reps? 5 reps maybe? It's not that much. So it's a pretty low standard to begin with. But I think what they've done is they've changed it so that if you fail the first time, instead of being disqualified from the whole thing, you get a second chance. Which I think is a good idea. I think you should get a couple of chances at something like that, because if there maybe is a little bit of technique involved in it, I think it's only fair that you adapt to whatever obscure test they throw at you. If it's a machine that only the PSNI has a hold of, how are you supposed to train for that? Okay, I get it. You can go to the gym and do bench pressing, you can do overhead pressing, you can do pull-ups, and etc. But if there's a little bit of technique involved, I think it makes sense to give someone a second chance at it. So I don't have any problem with that standard. It's not that it's being reduced. I have a problem with the standard not being very high to begin with, as in the weight. If you're trying to get a criminal into a police car or a police cell or onto the floor or whatever, put cuffs on them, if they're a big dude, the physics of it, they don't care whether you're a man or a woman. They don't care whether you believe in equal representation or not. If they have a weaker member of the PSNI trying to put them into a cell and they want to resist, guess what? They're obviously gonna prefer the weaker officer to be handling them, right? Rather than a stronger one. But I think there should be a minimum standard, and I think that minimum standard should be higher. As we said, it's not that hard. A couple of weeks, a couple of months for women to get up to there, for an average woman to get up to there. A guy will probably be up there anyway. So there is maybe more preparation required for women to be able to lift that amount of weight, or to press that amount of weight, or pull that amount of weight. But I think the standard's really low, like 35 kilos of pulling. That's not even a pull-up. I mean, is a singular pull-up, as a few pull-ups, is that too much to ask of someone who's supposed to serve and protect society? I mean, it's a real cruel indictment. I've chatted to cops before, and they've said the nature of the job, shift work, etc., makes it really difficult to stay fit, to stay in shape. So there's a fair chance that the recruits are actually fitter than the people who are in the PSNI right now. I know there's a whole overhaul happening, and they're always advertising for jobs for PTs in the police and everything, but I don't think it's mandatory. I don't think you have to do a minimum amount of classes or whatever per week. Maybe you do, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know. It's not a very high standard, and I think you should be aware of that if you're in the public, that you shouldn't feel just as safe as you might believe, because the standard's a lot lower. So that's specifically the PSNI. Now there are other police bodies that have maybe their own little nuances when it comes to that. But so there's a blog here that says howtobecome.com, and it's asking that question: has the police fitness test become too easy? So they're saying here that the bleep test is really, really easy. Basically, if you're a child, you could probably pass it. And it's not to say that they're making the point. We're not saying that we should hire less police officers, no, but we should have a standard, and it should be a pretty high standard. If you want to be serving in something like the PSNI, if you want to be serving in the Greater Manchester Police or the Metropolitan Police in London, surely you should be at the peak of physical fitness. At the peak. It's not that hard. It's more accessible than ever. The unlimited resources to be able to do that. Imagine you're a victim of a crime. Who are you going to want to call upon? An overweight cop who is out of breath before he even just gets out of the van or the car? Or do you want a cop who's going to arrive fast, jog after the guy, knock him down, put him in the back of the car? Who are you going to want? The best answer, I would say, is to be self-sufficient and to be able to, be strong enough yourself and be fit enough yourself. But I'm not saying we should discriminate someone because of their weight, but I am saying if your job requires a physical element to it, it's your responsibility to attain that standard and maintain that standard, and not to ask the standard to be dropped for you. And the police work is one of them. It's a physical job, and tackling crime, it's so important that they're in peak physical condition. For all sorts of reasons, their mental health as much as anything, the things and traumatic things that cops have to deal with probably on a daily basis that we never have to think about. Dealing with it through fitness is a wonderful way to be able to deal with that stress and to cope with that stress and to manage it. But if anybody wants to come on and talk about it, you can hide your name if you want to remain anonymous. If you're in the police, I'd love to chat to you. But what do you think? I'd like to hear your thoughts, listener. So let's look at the fire service and what they require of you from a fitness perspective. Fire and Rescue Service, I think it is over here, Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service. So as I said, I did the fitness test, or the aptitude tests, a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago maybe, and some of them were great fun. I really enjoyed them, I really did, and that was the best part of it for me. So they say they have 6 firefighter physical tests, and this is from fireservice.co.uk. I'm not sure if this is still up to date or not, but there's an equipment carrying with that: drag a hose raised from appliance for 25 metres and jog back 25 metres, pick up and carry 2 coiled 70 metre hoses for 100 metres, carry one coiled 70mm hose at chest height for 25 meters, then jog back 75 meters. Pick up and carry a 2.4 meter suction hose and basket strainer for 100 meters, then jog back 100 meters. Pick up and carry a simulated light portable pump for 100 meters, weighing approximately 30 kilos. So I didn't get to do that. It was something similar. I had to roll out, like, was it 3 hoses? I rolled out a hose 3 times and rolled up again in like 5 minutes or something. So that was just like staying cool and not mucking it up, and then making sure you finish it off, listening to instructions and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't that difficult, really. Fair enough. Not really physically demanding. You might get a wee bit out of breath, but nothing major. There's ladder climbs. This is a test of confidence with working at height. Candidates must demonstrate the correct leg lock at ground level before commencing the test. Wearing full personal protective equipment, including a harness, candidates must ascend a fully extended 13.5 meter ladder to approximately second story height and demonstrate a leg lock. Candidate will be required to lean back and arms outstretched and describe a symbol shown on the floor. The candidate will then descend. Yeah, I remember doing that one. That was good fun. I was just like approaching it like it was an Olympic event. I was like, yeah, let's go for this. Brilliant, good fun. Again, just following instructions, being cool, not getting your legs tangled, hanging upside down the ladder. But it required a certain amount of dexterity and leg strength, I guess, to climb up a ladder. Nothing major, like it's pretty basic. You know, your dog could probably do it, apart from the shouting out the sign at the bottom. Casualty evacuation is a test of lower and upper body strength. Candidates in full PPE are required to drag a 55 kilo casualty walking backwards, guided by an assessor, around a 30-meter course. I did not do that. I don't know, maybe this is a little bit older, this description, but I did not have to do that 3 or 4 years ago. I think that's a good one. I think that's a really good one. 55 kilos isn't very heavy though. It's a kind of small female. I think you better go on the upper limits. I think you need to get over 100 kilos there and try it. I think that would be more appropriate. 30 meters is not very far. That should be fine. And again, this should be able to be done by both men and women. It's kind of weird that that's not in it anymore. If it is in it and you know it's in the testing now, let me know. And then ladder lift and lower simulation. So again, this is a test of upper and lower body strength. Apparently, candidates full PPE will be required to raise a bar 75 centimeters off the ground to a height of 185 centimeters and back down to 75 meter support. The weight of the bar at the lifting point will start at 5 kilos. The maximum load be added will be 15 kilos. So again, it's not that heavy. 15 kilos overhead, 15 kilos off the ground isn't that heavy. Your suitcase is heavier, much heavier. If you're urban holidays with my wife. So yeah, the maximum load is to be added at 15 kilos, so it's not that heavy. I remember doing that one. You had to basically, just stop it, start it. Like it was really, really very easy. And then enclosed space. So this is a test of confidence, agility, possible claustrophobia by working in an enclosed space. Candidates full PPE when wearing breathing apparatus, face masks required to negotiate a measured crawl way within a set time. Half the route will be with clear vision, another half obscured vision. You're required to perform a specific task during this test. I remember doing that, something similar. You had to do like an obstacle course. It wasn't an obstacle course, it was kind of like a pod, and there's like different levels you had to climb up through and down and under and follow a line, and you're invisible. I can't remember if I did it with vision first time, and then they put a mask over us so we couldn't see. But yeah, again, good fun. Required a little bit of, just being able to control your own body. It didn't require any great strength or any sort of real physical preparedness. It's pretty simple stuff. Just, again, remind keeping a calm head. And then equipment assembly, there's a test of mental dexterity. Candidates will be required to assemble and disassemble an item of equipment and follow the color-coded diagrams provided. There was another test that we did. It was like a deadlift test. So it was like deadlifting 30 kilos. I have my doubts as to whether it was 30 kilos because it felt more like 20 kilos to me. I'm not convinced it was 30 kilos. And you had to do it just correctly, straight back, use the legs, blah, blah, blah. All the usual sort of manual handling stuff. But again, it was very, very low standard. I think my 2-year-old daughter could probably have, give it a good stab if she was tall enough. But I'm not kidding. But I'm told, I'm not sure, but I'm told that it was reduced from 50 kilos down to 30 kilos. And this was from a fighter who said that it was because they were trying to up the recruitment of females. His words, not mine. But it goes back to the same point. Why is the standard being reduced to try and get representation up? If you want to get representation up, give them more training, give them more help, give them better guidelines on how to be physically prepared for the job, and then reward them for doing that. Don't just like make the test easier. Like, it's the dumbest thing in the world. It seems like such a basic thing, but it's such a stupid thing. Basically, like, I'll give you how light 30 kilos is. 30 kilos is basically the weight I would start training someone how to do a deadlift. Okay, that's like the minimum we can put in the bar here to get to the right height to get a straight bar off the floor. It's not that heavy. It really isn't. My mum, who is in her 60s, can deadlift nearly 60 kilos. So, you know what I mean? I have other clients who are in late 60s, and they're like male clients, and they're deadlifting over 130 kilos, 140 kilos. I think one of them is lifted. This is someone in their 60s. This is someone who should be retired, who wouldn't be allowed to be in the fire service, which is crazy. And I've loads of other examples of people who are, they're just normal everyday people. They're not like, they wouldn't consider themselves remarkable, even if I do, but they're just applied themselves to the training. They've applied themselves to the process, and they've been rewarded by it. So my question again is, why is the standard being reduced so much? Why has the physical standard been reduced? I get that there's all sorts of other elements. There's other aspects that I had to go through whenever I was trying to get into the fire service and the retained fire service. Like, you know, like answering, doing mental arithmetic under pressure, the clock going. It wasn't my forte. I was able to get through it, but there's all sorts of other mental things that you have to do, which are really good. They're really challenging. I get the point of them, but why? I don't think you should bring the physical. I don't think you should bring that standard down either. But I definitely don't think you should bring the physical standard down just to get more women into it. I think that in itself is sexist. I think that in itself is a problem. It's assuming that women can't attain that standard that it was at, that higher standard that it was set at. Am I wrong? I think that's sexism in its most blatant form. It's saying, well, it's like taking pity on women. Oh, you aren't as strong as men, so we'll reduce the whole standard just to make it a bit easier for you guys. I think that is the epitome of sexism, and it annoys me. It really does. And I feel, as I said, less safe in my home if there's a house fire and I'm unconscious with inhalation of smoke. I feel less confident now and less safe because I know that the people who have gotten in there are potentially not strong enough to be able to carry my big ass out of the house. So yeah, let me know what you think. If there's anything there that I've said that has shocked you, or you disagree with, I would love to hear your thoughts. So what about the special forces? First of all, the army. So this is from the army.mod.uk website, physical employment standards. So role, fitness test, soldier. So I'm assuming this is like your, the new in-service physical employment standard for regular ground close combat personnel. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? So they've given you some infographics on their website here. You can check it out. So the first one is a loaded march, so infantry or RSC, and then there's like the 16AAB/para. So it's a slightly higher standard, I guess, but that's actually a lot higher standard. So it requires you to be able to go 4 kilometers with 40 kilos attached to you within 50 minutes, followed by a further 2 kilometers with 25 kilos in 15 minutes. And then the second one, they're 16AAB/para, 4 kilometers with 40 kilos, so same weight, same distance within 35 minutes. So they're shaving 15 minutes off your allowed time, followed by a further 2 kilometers with 25 kilos in 12 minutes 30 seconds. So they're shaving off your time there. They're making you have to move a little bit faster if you want to attain that higher standard. So I guess that's a pretty good test. I can see the point of that, because you're going to be carrying heavy ass equipment around with you, aren't you? If you're in the army, you're going to be carrying a big backpack. You're going to be carrying artillery. You're going to be carrying all sorts of things. So you're going to have to move quickly. So I can understand that. That makes sense. I can see the transference of skills required for that. 50 minutes. So going down from 50 to 35 minutes, it seems like a lot, doesn't it? 4 kilometers. So what's that? 5 kilometers is like 3 miles. So it's less than 3 miles. I don't like 50 minutes. I don't think that's that. It's not that far, is it? I mean, 40 kilos. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that rigorous a test. I think that's. I'd be keen to try it. I actually wouldn't mind trying it, but I think that would be all right. 50 minutes would be fine. Pretty sure you could do it with a fast walk, couldn't you? 50 minutes. 35 minutes is a bit tougher. I mean, you're gonna have to be kind of jogging at like a what's that, like a 11 minute mile, 30 minute mile pace to get 12 minute mile. Again, it's not that fast if you're just running, but if you're walking with a heavy load on you, you just have to keep moving, I guess. And 2 kilometers with 25 kilos and 12. I think it's pretty easy. So 1.6 kilometers is a mile. So yeah, I think it's a better standard, but again, it's not that rigorous, really, is it? I don't think it's going to take a lot of preparation for someone to get to that sort of spec. And then fire movement, so 7.5 tactical bounds controlled by a PTI, followed by a 15-meter crawl and a 15-minute sprint in 55 seconds. So tactical bounds, 7.5 meters. Again, it's not that far. Followed by a 15-meter crawl, 15-meter sprint. 15 meters is nothing, is it? Like, it's nothing. 55 seconds. I'd actually like to try that one. But again, I don't think it's that demanding. 55 seconds seems quite specific though, so there must be a reason they've chosen it instead of just going to the 60 seconds or the minute. I mean, they must have reduced that to some extent to have a decent standard. Oh, this is a good one. Casualty drag. So this is a 110 kilogram bag pulled over 20 meters in 35 seconds. So it's kind of similar to what they were saying there about the fire service. Was it 55 kilos and 30 meters? So they've reduced the distance but increased the weight substantially. They've doubled the weight essentially and knocked 10 meters off. You have to do it in 35 seconds. I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty good one. I would like to try that. 110 kilos is heavy to drag, but it's the weight of a big human. It's the weight of a big human. So if you've got someone in your team who's down, their bags there, you're going to have to start dragging their ass over ground with you. And you want to move it quickly so you don't get shot. And then number 4, water can carry. Oh, this is a good one. This is actually what we've started doing in our new class, Quick Fit. Got 2 big cans and filled them up with water. So one of them's like 25 kilos. Sorry, 2 of them are 25 kilos each and like 17 kilos or something like that, 16 kilos. So you have to, somebody that's moving with a stretcher, so you're carrying a load in either arm. And it's 240 meters in 4 minutes. Yeah, that's pretty decent. I think you're moving okay, but I don't think it's not an impossible standard. I don't think it's going to take an awful lot of preparation to be able to do that. If you've got decent grip strength, so if you've got a decent deadlift, and you've very basic cardiorespiratory fitness, I think you're going to be able to do that one easy enough. So that is the Army. What else do we have? We can also look at, this is the Royal Navy. So this will be a good one, I'm sure. So the Army's pretty decent starting point. So there's a pre-join fitness test plus. Pre-join fitness plus. This is the royalnavy.mod.uk. There's a step up from the pre-join test across the test of the Royal Navy. You'd be expected to push yourself to produce your best effort if you're going to excel at it, and throughout your initial training. To succeed, it's critical that you get the best possible physical conditioning, better than you've ever been before. Yeah, I'd be the judge of that. Since June 2021, the PJAFT Plus has resumed being conducted in Nuffield health gyms across the country under the assessment of a physical training instructor. The circuit conducted for the test includes 20 burpees, 30 sit-ups, 20 press-ups, and 1 minute plank. You have to complete that full circuit 3 times. On completion of the 3 circuits, and after a 2-minute recovery, you will have to perform 1 set of 5 pull-ups. Right, what do we think of this test? I think it's pretty basic. It doesn't tell you what the time does. It doesn't tell you how fast that has to be. There doesn't seem to be a time, but 20 burpees. Burpees are so annoying, aren't they? That's quite a lot. So that's like 60 burpees you're gonna have to do, and then 90 sit-ups, and then 60 push-ups, and then 1 minute plank. So you're doing quite a lot. Like at burpees, you're using your pressing muscles, using your chest, using your shoulders, using your triceps. So that's going to burn you out before you get to the press-ups. Sit-ups is just your core taking a whack in your ab and your lumbar. And your plank, obviously your core is going to be working for the press-ups and the sit-ups and a little bit of burpees as well. So that's going to make the plank more difficult. You're going to be out of breath the whole time. Again, it's not that impossible, is it? It's not terribly, terribly impossible, but it's not that technical either, you could say. I guess it's across the board for men and women. You have to manage your own body weight, which is an interesting take on it. I've heard of a lot. I think it's in America that they've taken out a lot of the sit-ups. So sit-ups aren't a requirement anymore because new recruits were getting so many lumbar injuries. They were getting their discs smashed to pieces. So they were just training and practicing and doing hundreds of sit-ups, and their back was just getting pulverized. Which, well, it's gonna happen, isn't it? If you're doing that many sit-ups, and they've done more kind of practical, functional testing now. I haven't looked into it too much, but just that's for memory. So yeah, bit of an odd one, that one. It doesn't seem as well rounded as the other tests. There's a swimming assessment as well, apparently. So you expect to step off a 3 meter platform, complete 2 laps of the pool, approximately 150 meters, using breaststroke without touching the sides of or floor of the pool. There's no time limit. Tread water for 2 minutes. Climb out of the pool without using the steps. So I can see benefit of that. Obviously, if you're in the water, you're in the Navy, you're gonna have to swim. You're gonna have to control your body. You're going to have to be able to tread water. You're going to have to be able to lift yourself up and out of water without using steps, because they're not always going to be available in war, are they? So yeah, that's pretty decent test. That I can get the swimming one. I'm not, again, swimming's not my thing, but there's no real strength test, is there? There's no real strength test there. Those are kind of fitnessy. And when I say fitnessy, I mean like, basic body weight things and cardiorespiratory. So not that rigorous, really. What else? There's another one here. I think this gives us a nice overview here of all the different tests in the armed forces. So this one's from 2015, just to give some context in case this has changed since then, but it's 2015. And it's saying, here's the Royal Marines, so it's saying you need to do 2.4 kilometre runs. First run must be completed within 12 minutes and 30 seconds, the second run must be completed in under 10 minutes. Huh. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? It doesn't really make sense to me. Why would you go, so you go slower in the first run, faster in the second run? Surely it's of no benefit in the first one to do it any faster than 12 minutes, 29 seconds. You want to make sure you're hitting it right and use every part of it, and then second run under 10 minutes. So yeah, it's up in the intensity, I guess, but under fatigue, interesting idea. And then it says here, achieve level 13 at least on the bleep test. So that's pretty decent. That's up there, isn't it? Alright. Complete a minimum of 60 press-ups. So again, like, what's the point of so much? It's not a strength test. More of an endurance test, if anything. Complete a target of 80 sit-ups in 2 minutes. Again, you're just bashing the crap out of your lower back. Complete a target of 8 overhand grip pull-ups. Sorry, I forgot to say that about the Navy test. You have to do 5 pull-ups. 5 pull-ups is pretty easy. 5 pull-ups is pretty basic. At least it should be pretty basic for most people. And if you're trying to get into the special forces, you're by definition special, so you should be required to do, I would say, more than that. I would say over 10 is definitely should be a requirement. So this is saying complete a target of 8 overhand grip pull-ups. That's more difficult, and that's a slightly higher standard. And what else do we have? So then there's, it's saying here, oh yeah, the Royal Navy, I've done that one already, got that. And Air Force, Royal Air Force, this is a good one. So finishing a 2.4 kilometre run in less than 11 minutes 11 seconds, so a little bit tighter for time, but it's just one run, isn't it? So this is for males aged 17 to 29, and for females and those aged over 30, the pass marks are slightly lower. Why are they lower? I don't understand why they're lower. The enemy doesn't care. Like, who's the enemy? Oh yeah, Russia's the enemy at the minute. Right, we'll not say Russia. That's not, like, I know it's politically correct to hate Russia right now and everything, but let's say Iran. No. Let's just pick someone friendly. Australia. Say you're going to war with Australia, right? Don't know why you would. They don't care. But why would they care? Like they're not going to be like, oh, you're a woman. Oh, we'll go a bit easier on you. We'll give you a 10-second head start before we open fire. It doesn't happen. It's just insanity. It's so stupid. Complete a minimum of 20 press-ups. Complete a minimum of 35 sit-ups. Achieve level 9.10 on the bleep test. It's insanity, isn't it? And then here's the British Army. This is infantry level. So finish 2.4 kilometer run in less than 10 minutes 30 seconds. So what's that, like a mile and a half? So again, it's decent. It's okay. It's fine. If you're decent at run at all, it's pretty easy. If you train for a couple of weeks, you probably get to that pretty easily. A complete power bag lifts of 15 kilos up to 40 kilos, and then as much weight as possible to a height of 145 centimeters, 1.45 meters. So complete power bag lifts of 40 kilos. Again, it's not that heavy, and 1.45 meters is not that heavy. Sorry, it's not that high. Like, it's really not. And then to carry 2 jerry cans weigh 20 kilometers, 120 meters in 2 minutes, while moving at a speed of 5.4 kilometers. It's very specific, isn't it? And then British Army paratroopers finished 2.4 kilometer run, less than 9 minutes 40 seconds. That's a bit tougher. That is up there. That is a lot more challenging. That's like a mile and a half. Yeah, I don't think I could do that right now. In fact, I know I couldn't. So that's a better standard. That's where we're getting more like it. Why would you not? Why would you lower your standard? Like that's a good starting point. It's a pretty good starting point. I think within a few months I could get up to that. I think a couple of months I would be able to get my running down there. So Netherlands complete power bag lifts of 15 kilometers up to 40 kilometers, and then as much weight as possible to a height of 145 meters. That sounds like a fun one, and again, standard isn't that high. It's not that heavy. Complete a minimum of 44 push-ups. Complete a minimum of 50 sit-ups. Again, banging the lower back. 44 press-ups. Carry 2 jerry cans which weigh 20 kilos for 120 meters in 2 minutes whilst moving at a speed of 5.4 kilometers. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of relying on your lungs, it's relying on your being able to manage your own body. You know, sit-ups. I don't see the point in the sit-ups. I think that's a stupid one. That could be taken out. Complete a minimum of 44 press-ups. Why 44? Why not 45 or 43? They must have a cut-off point there that they've got, like, right, everyone's getting 45. Sorry, everyone's getting 40, that's up to 44. Everyone's getting 42, that's up to 44. There must be something like that. There must be some sort of data that's based upon, because it's such a random number, isn't it? But again, why not have a bench press competition? Why not have a bench press for that? Why not have yeah, I get the point in doing press ups, but once you kind of get over 20 press ups, it kind of gets boring and you don't learn an awful lot, is my argument. I think going up the weights and having some sort of a strength element, there's just, as you noticed in all of these, there's a strength element missing. You might say, Stuart, carrying 2 jerry cans weighing 20 kilos for 120 meters in 2 minutes is a strength test. It's not a strength test. It's really not a strength test. It's an endurance test. You're carrying 40 kilos, 120 meters, and you're trying to keep moving. So your lungs are going to get a bashing. If you can deadlift 100 kilos, that's not a strength test. If you can't deadlift 30 kilos, maybe there's an argument that that's a bit of a strength test. It's probably going to be pretty much impossible because you're having to carry more than you can deadlift. So with all of these tests, almost all of them without exception, there's no element of strength really required, like a significant amount of strength, other than lifting your own body weight, which, again, unless you're putting on weight, as we've already said, is not strength by definition. If you're putting on weight, you're getting strong, and lifting yourself, you're getting stronger. But there's no kind of top-end strength test. There's no deadlift test. There's no squat test. There's no bench press test. There's no there's nothing that's testing max lifts. And I'm not suggesting you should do like a 1 rep max. I'm suggesting that you should be able to, you should have to do something for 5 reps. And I'm also suggesting to you, if you're listening to this and you're going to join whether it's the police or the fire service or any of the special forces, that you do strength training, because it's going to make all of these tests so much easier. So much easier. The only ones that are really going to really challenge you if you're doing if you've been strength training, is that 1.5 meter run, 2.4 kilometer run in less than 9 minutes 40 seconds to get into the paratroopers. So if you're getting into the paratroopers, I can see why you need to start doing some more cardio stuff. All of the other rest of them can be addressed by doing strength training. So squats, deadlifts, bench press, overhead press, pull-ups, all the basics. And your cardiorespiratory system will be just fine, as long as you don't just go from the gym to the sofa and lie there in between training sessions. Just, you're walking about, you're moving. But I'll give you an example. We did a big obstacle course run there on Saturday up at Moneymore. at the jungle called the Rampage Run. It was immense fun. It was so good. We had such a good day. My jaws were sore from laughing the next day. I didn't have really very many aches or pains. In fact, I didn't have any. My legs were fine. I thought they'd have been a bit heavy and a bit sore because I haven't ran for about 2 years. For the last year, I've just been doing exclusively strength training. So 3, sometimes 4 strength sessions a week, sort of every other day. And I had done some Metcons last winter over Zoom with the guys. That's the last time I've done any sort of cardio training. You classify as cardio. And I managed just fine. Now, I'm not saying I was the fastest. I'm not saying I was the only one who was in that boat. I'm sure there's lots of other people who've never really done any training at all and they were fine. But what I'm saying is you can cover a multitude of bases by doing strength training. By just lifting heavy things regularly, you're going to condition your heart, you're going to condition your lungs, and it's going to get you out of all sorts of holes. Now, if you're training for something specific, like run a mile and a half in 9 minutes, what was that, 40 seconds, then yes, there's an argument to be made for doing more kind of work. But for most of the stuff, if you had a bit of strength in your legs, you're doing heavy squats, you're doing deadlifts, you're doing presses, it got you out of so many holes. It really did. And in today's modern world, when we're all pushed for time, we're all busy, we're all got stuff going on, we're going here, there, and everywhere. What we need is efficiency, right? We need efficiency. We need to be able to move, we'd be able to enjoy our exercise and not have to spend half of our week doing exercise. 2 or 3 sessions of strength per week, 1 hour at a time, is going to keep you going. It's going to do all sorts of things for you, as I'm always banging on about. But that's a really good real life example of it. Now, I'd like to do something a bit more competitive and see if I can how to do with it, just based upon doing strength training. I think it'd be okay. I don't think it'd be too bad. I'm not anyway a special athlete. I am not very genetically gifted at all. But to me, I was thinking, oh, maybe I should start running to prepare for this obstacle course. But actually, then I had a second thought. I thought, you know what, I'm going to put a little test in place and see how I get on without any preparation, with any specific preparation for a run or anything. What it did was actually, like 2 days before, I did like a couple of heavy, bit like in this test, jerry can carries of 25 kilos in each arm, just up and down, like 50 meters up, 50 meters down. And then I did like a Berlin Wall climb over a couple of times. And that was the extent of and a couple of rope climbs actually as well. That was as specific as my training got. And none of those were things were required. Well, maybe the Berlin Wall, I had to climb over stuff. But if you build a bit of upper body strength and you build a bit of lower body strength, it's going to enable you to run, crawl, climb, do all that's required. And probably all the things that are going to be demanded of you in the special forces. So those are my thoughts on the standards. I would love to hear your thoughts. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what I haven't thought of. Tell me what if I'm picking up the wrong end of the stick or if I'm not up to date on any of those standards. I would love to hear from you. So yeah, let me know. Going to look at a News of the Week article now, and this one is from the 4th of May in New Scientist. It's a publication. There's some interesting things in it sometimes, and there's some absolute rubbish. There's some things that just pretend to be science, but they're just pure opinion. A bit like what I'm doing here, I guess, but they kind of dress it up a bit more. Anyway, this one is called Just 1 in 20 Adults in England Exercise Their Muscles Enough. A survey suggests that only 1 in 20 people aged between 19 and 64 are meeting England's strictest weekly strength exercising guidelines. So I shared a snippet of this on Insta stories one day. Didn't really get much of a response from people, but that's not new. I'll read out a few things here and I'll pick out a few interesting points. So the latest thinking is that strength exercises are important for health. No kidding. But just 1 in 20 people aged between 19 and 64 are meeting England's strictest weekly strength training guidelines. Gavin Sandercock at the University of Essex in the UK and his colleagues looked at survey data from over 275,000 adults in this age group. Between 2015 and 2017, these people were asked to estimate how much time they spent doing physical activity each week. That's a problem straight away, is asking people in a survey to estimate how much physical activity they're doing each week. Because number one, we always get it wrong, whether it's overestimating or underestimating. We're more likely to overestimate. We're more likely to say, oh yeah, I'm really busy and do da-da-da. We always overestimate what we do. We always underestimate how many calories we're eating. We always overestimate how much exercise and much work we actually do. that's just a side point. The team wanted to find out what proportion of these adults in England met the UK's weekly health guidelines, which recommends 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, including 2 bouts of strength training. So it's not that strict, is it? I mean, the strictest, England says at the top here, England's strictest weekly strength exercising guidelines. So strength training is defined as any activity that strengthens muscle or bone and is done to fatigue. I don't know if it is or not. Strength training, I would say, is defined as producing more strength. You're training to get stronger. You get stronger than you currently are. So the first part's right. Strengthens bone or muscle and is done to fatigue. I don't think doing anything to fatigue is necessarily a good thing, and it's certainly not helpful if you're training for strength. If you're training to fatigue, you're probably going to hurt yourself. If you train to fatigue and you're doing squats, I mean full fatigue, you're probably going to be borderline whether you're going to get that last squat up or not. You're also probably going to hurt your back if you're deadlifting to failure, says Sandra Cox. I'm not sure about Mr. Sandra Cox's definition of strength, but that aside, got the first part right, I would say. This can include lifting weights, bodyweight exercises, and fitness plans. Lifting weights, bodyweight exercises, and fitness plans. So bodyweight exercise, yes, there's an argument to be made that is a strength exercise to a point. If you can't lift your own body, okay, if you can't do a pull-up, then yes, getting to the point where you can do a pull-up would be strengthening. That is strength training. After a certain point, it goes from strength into our other areas such as stamina, endurance. It's no longer strength after a certain point. There's a different requirement of your muscles after a certain point. He says strength training is important because in later life, stronger muscles can help you climb the stairs, dig the garden, and pick up your grandchildren. Amen. He's 100% correct. All of that plus much, much, much more. As well as strong bones. If you have a fall, they're not going to crumble and break as easily if you have stronger bones, and you can help prevent osteoporosis. The researchers found that on average, just 5% of these adults in England met the full recommendation, including strength training, but this figure jumped to 67% when the team only looked at what proportion engaged in 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, regardless of what form the exercise took. Most of the physical activity that people report in their 150 minutes per week in the UK is actually incidental, Sandra Cox says. This can be achieved, for example, via a person's walk or cycle to work. The researchers found that men were more likely to meet all the guidelines as well as younger age groups, but the strongest effect that we found when we looked at the variables was education. So, research is a bit sexist, isn't it? I wonder if Kate listening to this. The researchers found that men were more likely to meet all the guidelines. Well, there's loads of reasons for that, and we chatted with Stephanie about that. Like, women tend to put themselves last. Women tend to put their family first, they put their kids first, and they think of themselves last. They're quite sacrificial in that regard. And Stephanie had some crazy stats about that the last time we had a podcast episode, so do listen to that. There's more information on that. So that's quite shocking and quite worrying. So this is interesting about education. There are two main reasons why this could be the case. Sandra Cox says people who are more educated may be more likely to know what the UK's recommended health advice is. I don't think people really give a toss about what the UK's recommended health advice is. I think people exercise because it makes them feel good. I think I don't even know what it is. I generally don't. Before I read this article, it's information that goes in one ear out the other. It's not really very useful. It's about like your 5-a-day fruit. That was a big campaign. Now, does that mean you should stop when you get the 5 pieces of fruit per day? Does that mean that you're going to die the next day if you don't eat 5 pieces of fruit? No, it's just propaganda. The point of it is to eat more fruit. That's kind of the point of it, right? And the same with exercise, 150 minutes per week, 2 bouts of strength training. I wouldn't know that. Maybe doctors and GPs and stuff recommend that sort of stuff, but I don't really care. I don't really care. So I don't think that's the reason that people who are more educated might be more likely to know what you can. Maybe they do. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so. On the other hand, it could be that strength training, especially different weights, often requires access to a gym, which costs money, says Sandra Cox. Higher levels of education have been linked to greater wealth, he says. That's a fair enough point. There's a lot of gyms which are really expensive. There's a lot of gyms which are really cheap. So I guess there's some validity to what he's saying there. Although weights are really accessible. Weights are a great investment. I think everybody should have weights. Now, if you don't have somewhere to put them, that's an issue. but nearly everybody's got some dumbbells lying about, right? I think there's also like there's also kind of the aspect of it where women and weights haven't gone together as well as they have in recent years, thankfully. There's been a kind of demonization of weights and making women feel like they shouldn't lift weights and it's a guy thing to do, which is a real shame. Thankfully, that is being overcome. Sanakok says lifting barbells isn't the only way to strengthen muscles. He says combat sport, dance classes, and circuit training are all forms of strength training. I would say that is true up to a point, and that point is probably after the first 2 weeks. I suppose it comes down to how you define terms. So he's talking about strengthening exercises. I think what he means is resistance. So if you're in a combat sport, yes, you're resisting an opponent. If you're in dance class, you're resisting gravity. If you're in circuit training, you're going to be lifting probably light weights and body weight things, and again, resisting against those in gravity. But it's not strength training. There is a difference between resistance training and strength training, I would say, and that is the point where your muscles go from strength, from getting stronger, to from lifting more weight. So it's applying force to an external resistance, essentially. So if you put more weight on the bar or the dumbbell or whatever implement you're using, if you put on weight and you lift yourself, you're getting stronger. Fair enough. If you're doing pull-ups and you used to weigh 10 stone, now you weigh 12 stone, yep, fair enough. That's strength training. You're getting stronger. But if you're doing more than kind of 5, 6, if you're doing kind of more than 10 reps, that's no longer strength training. You're going into, and I'm not putting a specific number on it, but you're going from the realm of strength to the realm of endurance and stamina. So I'm not surprised with the findings, says Anne Tiedemann of the University of Sydney. To encourage greater participation in strength training, I believe we need to raise awareness about its multiple benefits that go beyond aesthetics. Amen. We need to emphasize that strength training is relevant to health and fitness across all age groups and not just for young males. That's, 100%. I can't agree anymore. I couldn't have said it better myself. But I also think it's important not to tell people that combat sports, dance classes, and circuit training are all forms of strength training, because they're not. Okay? They're not, and they never can be, unless you're putting on weight every week. Considering the fact that age-related loss of muscle mass and skeletal muscle dysfunction are the cause of many chronic diseases, this is a great concern, says Ken Nawaska at Edith Cowan University in Australia. Every muscle contraction counts, and even a 3-second muscle contraction daily can increase muscle strength. That's right. There's that study a while ago. Again, nobody's let me know how they get on with that, if they've gotten stronger from a 3-second muscle contraction per day. So yeah, that's an interesting article. Some interesting points. Some things, as you can see, like there's people will use their leverage. They'll use their doctorship, their doctorate. They'll use their status of education to kind of get a pass without defining terms. They'll just tell you things, expect you to believe them and to accept them. But it's important to question them. It's important to go, is a combat sport really a strength exercise? Is dance classes or circuit training really strengthening? Yes, up to a point, but I think in today's world we want things to be really simple, really straightforward, and we don't want to have to think too long. So if it's any longer than, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. This makes you fat, this makes you skinny. If it's any more complicated than that, a lot of those tune out, which is unfortunate, because I think we need to see the nuance of it and see the balance and discuss things like this. But yeah, interesting article. Let me know your thoughts. We've got a second News of the Week article, and this one's from New Scientist as well. It just happened to pop up as I was scrolling through, so I thought I would share it with you. It's from the 25th of April, and the title of it is People with over 80 with overweight BMI, so that's over 25, basically, may have lower mortality rates. Body mass index of over 25 is normally considered unhealthy, but a study of more than 27,000 people in China suggests that may not be the case for older age groups. So this is an interesting one for me personally, because I've had a theory on this for a couple of years now. I think that you're better being a bit overweight if you're quite elderly than underweight. If you ever see somebody who is now up to a point, obviously you don't want to put stress in your joints, and it's important to know what kind of weight that is, if it's fat or muscle. Now, that's kind of the debate when it comes to using BMI as any sort of a reference, and I've said that from the very beginning whenever I started cross functional fitness over 5 years ago and before that. But BMI is a load of bull crap. It really is. It's helpful in some ways, I guess, for really overweight people to kind of give you a gauge of what way progress is going. Because body fat, after a certain point, will not really tell you what body fat it is. It'll just say you're overweight. Now, having this arbitrary marker of 25 is ridiculous, because there's rugby players who are fit, healthy, strong, active, who are over 25, and I'll be telling them that they're obese. They're morbidly obese. They're unhealthy, and there's other people who are, under 25 who are really unhealthy. They'll be smoking, they'll be drinking, and they'll be 23, but the doctor will be like, yeah, you look good. Now they will check other things, but like, to the outside person, if your BMI, you ask what your BMI is and you said you're 23, they'll be like, oh, that's good, it's healthy, yeah. But there might be an absolute train wreck on the inside. But this study is interesting because I've long had a theory that people who are older should try to keep heavier weight than try to go on that one side of the scale rather than the other side of the scale. It's better to be a bit heavier than a bit lighter. And I haven't really based it on anything specific. I haven't done any studies, but just based upon training people, I guess. And the more I know about how the body loses muscle tissue as we age, the more I learn about that, the more I think it's important to eat plenty of meat. There's lots of studies on that, why older people should be eating more meat, more protein. So this study says people over 80 whose body mass index is higher than currently recommended have a lower mortality rate. A large-scale analysis in China has found. The findings suggest that weight guidelines should be changed for this age group. BMI scores are used to estimate whether or not someone has a healthy weight. It is based on a person's height and weight, and most guidelines suggest that someone with a score above 25 is overweight, while those with scores over 30 are considered obese. These guidelines are largely based on measurements taken from younger age groups, says Xiaoming Shi. I apologize if I got your name wrong. At the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention in Beijing. As the world's population ages, it is important to ensure that these recommendations make sense for older age groups too, he says. She and his colleagues studied mortality risk in more than 27,000 people over the age of 80 across China from 1998 onwards. The participants had an average age of 93. Average age, whoa! When they enrolled in the study, and they were followed up until 2018 or their deaths. Previous analysis had found a link between higher BMI scores in older age groups and a lower mortality rate, but this is the first study to look at this question with such a large sample size. Pretty big, 27,000. That's pretty decent. In this analysis, the researchers found that the optimal BMI for the over 80s was around 29. This was largely driven by a lower risk of death from non-cardiovascular disease causes such as cancer or respiratory disease. This group also had a lower risk of death from cardiovascular diseases, but the relationship was weaker. So that's an important point. Even if you are heavier, you need to stay active. You need to keep your cardiorespiratory system intact. Even those with a BMI in the obese range, so from 30 to 35, had a lower mortality rate than those in the 20 to 25 range. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? The extent of it. I didn't realise it would be that extreme, but it's interesting. The team accounted for several factors, including socioeconomic status, education background, and whether a person smoked. So those are huge factors, aren't they? And it's good that they're isolating those or thinking of those. She says it is unclear why a higher BMI is linked with a lower mortality rate, but speculates that it may be due to people having more nutritious diet. Kind of like we said there, right? He also notes that in general the BMI scores of this population were lower than those found in the West. Over 40% of the over 60s in the US are obese. Our findings may not be generalizable to other age groups and ethnic groups, he says. This study highlights the importance of taking age into account when considering the relationship between BMI and mortality or other health risks, says Louise Bauer at the University of Sydney. She says the study can't tell us exactly why being overweight may be being overweight. It's all how you define it, isn't it? Being overweight, maybe that's probably perfect weight for them based upon these studies because they're living longer. Maybe linked to better health outcomes in the over 80s, but agrees that it may be due to better nutrition. While BMI is an accessible and affordable way to screen a person's health, it shouldn't be relied on as a single measure of health, says Nicholas Fuller, also at the University of Sydney. University of Sydney, you're getting a real plug, aren't you, from the New Scientist? BMI is based on body weight, but a person's disease risk is linked to body fat, not weight. So I'm sorry if you're part of the movement that is saying that being really lots and lots of body fat on you is okay as long as you're happy. Disease doesn't look at it like that, unfortunately. You might be really happy, but if we pick up a disease that we don't want to have, cancer, heart disease, like high blood pressure, there's so many, kidney disease, liver failure, like there's all sorts of things can kind of come from this. It is more important to focus on measures that tell us more about fat in the body and where it's distributed, such as waist circumference, to get a better understanding of health and risk. So like we said at the start, kind of goes back to my theory, like, which is completely unbacked by any sort of studies. It's just something that I had in my head and based upon a whole range of things, I guess, but I'm glad somebody agrees with me. So we've always had this thing in CrossFit Fitness where, like, yes, we've got a little device here that measures your BMI, but it measures your body fat. So I've always really emphasized body fat. Body fat is an important metric, it's an important measurement. It's not the be all and end all. It's not the only thing, but it's important, coupled with BMI, coupled with waist circumference, coupled with your strength, coupled with, you know, your muscle tissue as well, coupled with your weight. There's the more measurements, the more metrics we can use to measure where you're currently at, the better we can interpret it, and the better we can figure out if you're improving or getting worse in whatever regard you want to go. So if you're trying to get leaner, just going by BMI is not going to help, because you could be losing muscle tissue. Just going by weight's not going to help. You could be losing muscle tissue, you could be losing glycogen, you could be losing water. There's all sorts of things, other types of substances you could be losing, and it'll show up as weight. Do you get what I mean? So we're always quite big in emphasizing that, and I try to emphasize that and go over and over and over again on that point as often as I can. You've probably heard me rambling on about it on the podcast, but clients are probably sick of me telling you that. But I think there's a few takeaways from this one. If you're getting older, so if you're kind of in your 60s, 70s and 80s and above, you want to make sure you're eating plenty of good, high quality food, lots of protein, and you're moving, you're doing strength training, you're getting stronger, you're getting out for walks, getting out for some sort of movement to try and keep the body fat percentage down, keep your metabolism ticking over as best it can, and yeah, stay strong. Keep your tissues up high quality tissue, muscle tissue rather than fat tissue if possible, and yeah, keep your BMI higher than lower. Don't think you need to get scrawny and skinny. Yes, atrophy happens as we age, we lose muscle naturally, but you can do something about it. And this study shows the benefits of doing something about it. I think whenever you're more active, you're going to hold on to muscle better. And if you do strength training, it gives you the best possible chance to do that. Okay, so it's joke of the week time. I've been saving this one up because it's so good. You're going to love it. If you're standing up, you might want to sit down for this one. What's the difference between Iron Man and Aluminium Man? Iron Man stops the bad guys, but Aluminium Man just foils their plans. I'll see myself out.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.